right, so we have arrived at module 3. Now, first, where do we start in this course? We started by looking at this population, characteristics, what you're likely going to encounter in the session. A lot of pieces of just getting to know what are elements of this population that help us to better understand, to better put ourselves in their shoes and focus on what's really bothering them. And then we moved into treatment models. We looked at when it comes to crisis approaches, addressing trauma, because we know that that's going to be a part of this mix. No matter what, we're going to have to take some time to process through that. And then we also hovered around making sure you, as the provider, you are ready to deal with the exposure of some of these trauma narratives. So now we come to that end piece, which is really preparing your first responder to go back into their lives without you, because the goal is always to be working our way out of their lives, and have resilience, have the ability to maintain wellness, to maintain what they need to continue going. And so this is really where we settle in. We're going to settle into the resilience model, the peace resilience model. So PEACE, we're going to walk you all the way through it, every element of this, so that you feel comfortable and ready to give them the gift of resilience and maintaining their wellness.
Absolutely. And I love using that word peace, because I always say it's protecting your peace, right?
I like that.
Yeah. So, throughout the peace model, you're going to find various elements of psychoeducation, self evaluation. You're going to find lots of tips. Tools, strategies to employ with your clients. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to talk about the plan that we develop. But we'll walk you through that first P, that psychoeducation on trauma, so vital to kind of set the stage for an understanding and to normalize the symptoms and the experience that they may go through. In fact, it may not be may go through, that they will
They
go
will,
through, right?
yeah.
It's not if, it's going to be when.
Mhm.
And it's likely going to be multiple occasions. So we know our first responders are humans as well. And so they
Mhm.
may have experienced some prior trauma, and now they're putting themselves in a career field where they know they will be further exposed. So even some complex trauma issues that we need to make sure that they are
Mhm.
prepared for. So psychoeducation, kind of setting that stage for
Yeah.
them. And then we move into establishing awareness, right? What happens to their bodies, to their minds
Mhm.
as they are exposed to these various scenarios. We want to figure out personally for them what works best for each of these areas, and what their symptomology might be typical for them
Yeah.
in these situations, because we know people are going to have reactions. Some of them are
Mhm.
very healthy, normal, typical reactions. Others might require a little more support.
And when we think about expanding awareness, we're not just talking about skills and working with skills just for this one-time thing. These are skills, as we go
Right.
through each area of the resilience model, that can be applied everywhere.
Yes, and I think that moves into, our activating healthy habits. The
Yes.
same thing applies. This is not just a trauma sensitive approach to healing and to treatment. This is something that helps everyone
Yes.
for the most part. So we're talking about activating healthy habits. We are looking at a very basic model from Maslow's hierarchy that's
Mhm.
used all over the world, looking at those physiological needs and working your way, as I say, up the pyramid or up the ladder to self actualization. And if you're working with the book, it's going to give you the evaluation pieces, the tools, the techniques to employ based on your specific client's strengths and challenges. So we'll work our way up through that to activating the healthy
Mhm.
habits. And then your client can always return to those various areas
Yeah.
depending on what's going on for them. So I think that's a great way to really get into the meat and potatoes. It's a very large, robust area of the model. And then, of course, we move into the coping with acute stress.
Mm.
We know they're going to need this piece. It's vital for first responders. So again, not if, it's when and how often they're going to have these particular situations
Yeah.
that feel very heavy. And despite having signed up for it, right? We know that the reactions are going to come. We want to really focus on that 24 to 72-hour adjustment period right after a big situation, and how they can handle that to their best ability and create that and promote that resilience for them. Lastly, we'll step into the last E, which is establishing a resiliency plan. we want to make sure that as their parting gift, right,
Yes.
they get something that's personalized, that's
Hmm.
structured based on what works for them and what doesn't.
Hmm.
And I think the big component of that being that it's adjustable, that over
Hmm.
time, it's something that they can switch up, that they can change, that they can reestablish if they find that something is no longer working for them at a particular time during their career or their lifetime.
Hmm. One thing that you're going to notice as you kind of walk through the levels of peace resilience model and looking at the different elements is that this is a very applicable model for those that are not only dealing with trauma but that are going to go right back into it. So if you look at some of the other resiliency models, you're going to see there are amazing elements, right, that help well-being and that help that sense of perseverance and that sense of moving through adversity. But the difference with this model is that it's specifically for knowing that you're going to be exposed to trauma again. So it's one thing to think, okay, we're going to recover and move on, but this population is not just going to recover and move on and never have trauma exposure again.
Right. It is
They
a
got to go
unique
back to work
population.
the next
Yes.
day. Like, so this model is about preparing them to maintain that sense of wellness with knowing that they're going to be going through adversity, going through trauma exposure over and over again. So it's not enough just to treat trauma, just to recover from it, but we also have to then pair that with resilience so that they can not only have healing, but they can have maintaining that wellness, holding on to that as they go forward and be prepared. So it's essentially like we're trying to add an extra layer of protection around our client before we send them out into the world.
That's right.